Good morning, everyone. Hope everyone had a good and safe Thanksgiving. I know we had a great Thanksgiving getting together. Excuse the noise behind me. The doggies have to be in here. This is a short intro to a video that was over on our second channel. And a while back I said I was trying to move all of those videos to our main channel here that we had done. I did this a few years ago about the Magi and Daniel, and it was a lot of research. It really was. And so I hope you enjoy it as much as I enjoyed doing it, because there's a lot of rabbit holes about that. I also want to thank all of the viewers who have been watching my 4 JWs charged in Pennsylvania. Oh my goodness, I was shocked. The views are just tremendous. As of this morning, we had 138,149 views on that. So thank you so much, everybody, for watching that, and thank you all of you who have liked and subscribed all of our videos. We appreciate it. So I hope you enjoy this one. Have a good weekend. Good morning, everyone. Need coffee for this one. Thank you for joining me on our second channel. As many of you know, that we love doing research, and we're not afraid to research anything. And on this channel, we just want to share with all of you what we're learning, and some of the research we're doing. And I want to thank everybody so much for the emails that you have sent me, helping me with some of this research. And it's interesting because I wasn't expecting to go down so many rabbit holes over the Magi. My goodness, because there's not really that much information about them. And so just going to try to decode them a little bit. And first I want to mention that a dear friend of ours just did a video, and she mentions the 50 years that she was a Jehovah's Witness in Watchtower. And she mentions that Jehovah's Witnesses have an unwritten rule that you cannot say anything negative about the Bible or the organization or criticize it without being hauled in before the elders and possibly a judicial committee. So I would like to just expand a little bit on that thought, because it appears on social media, YouTube, there's an unwritten rule among most religious people that you cannot believe in a higher source or God, the Father, and criticize the Bible, or you're condemned as a heretic. And they like to throw that word around a lot. So, hi heretics, and welcome to this channel. And don't you dare say you are a Christian and believe in God, but criticize the Bible as not being inspired of God. They can't figure that out. They can't figure you out. They can't put a label on you except heretic. But we're told at Proverbs 2:4-5 that you need to seek for it like silver and search for it as for hidden treasure. Then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. But if we are to grow as spiritual beings, why not investigate all things? So that being said, now most of the information we get about the Magi is in the Bible, in the Greek scriptures, the New Testament, in Matthew. Matthew 2, verse 1. I'll just read that real quick. Now I'm using the New World Translation just because that's what I grew up with, and they have footnotes that most other Bibles don't have. And I know a lot of ex-JWs watch this channel. Matthew 2:1. After Jesus had been born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, look, astrologers from eastern parts came to Jerusalem, saying, "Where is the one born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when we were in the east, and we have come to do him obeisance." So, these 12 verses, 1 through 12, are almost all there is in the Bible. There's a few other references, but it doesn't really talk about the Magi except this. And this particular story has the most significance because this is this time of year when everybody knows the nativity story, and they call them the three kings that came from the east to give gifts to the baby Jesus. Well, when you read that carefully and start researching, why were they called kings? Now, tradition has it that they weren't actually kings. And the only reason they are called kings is because in many of the religions and cultures today believe that star represented Jesus or Yeshua. So let's go to Numbers. Numbers 24:17. I shall see him, but not now. I shall behold him, but not near. A star will certainly step forth out of Jacob, and a scepter will indeed rise out of Israel, and he will certainly break apart the temples of Moab's head, and the cranium of all the sons of tumult of war. Now, many believe this is a prophecy about Jesus, and it says a star will step forth out of Jacob. So they were looking for a star. Even here in the Torah, a lot of these prophecies was looking for this star, and they knew about what time he would be appearing according to other prophecies in the Bible. Many more rabbit holes, and I didn't want to get into details about that. But let's go to another one. It's Psalm 72:10. The kings of Tarshish and of the islands, tribute they will pay. The kings of Sheba and Seba, a gift they will present. Now this right here is like, oh, well then these wise men that came to give Jesus gifts, this prophecy is fulfilled now, and this is why they call them kings. So like I said, it's mostly tradition that these were kings, wise men, magi, magic practicing priests, sorcerers, astrologers. I know the Jehovah's Witness Bible, the New World Translation, uses the word astrologers. Now, when you go to the dictionary and you look up magi, it says that it's actually the plural of magus. Magus is the singular one. And the definition of magus, a member of a hereditary priestly class among the ancient Medes and Persians, often capitalized one of the traditionally three wise men from the east paying homage to the infant Jesus. Magician or sorcerer. So we kind of get the idea. Now this is also where we in English get the word magic. Magician. It goes all the way back to this ancient Persian word. Now many scholars feel that the Magi were praised in Zoroastrianism and the earlier religions of the Western Iranians. The earliest known use of the word Magi is the trilingual inscription written by Darius the Great, known as the Behistun inscription. Now, there's many websites that talk about this. And I even came across, there is an ancient manuscript that was translated back in 2010, It is a book called Revelation of the Magi, translated into English by Brent Landau. Now, this was an ancient manuscript found in the Vatican Library, their archives. Makes you wonder what else is in there. But I haven't read the book. I haven't had a chance to get it yet. But I even seen a news report on YouTube about this book and the translation. And he says that it's quite different than the traditional nativity story. And that these three wise men, Magi, came from the far eastern land of Shur, S-H-I-R, and they believe that was China. Because most of the tradition nowadays is they came from Persia, Iran, that area, and that could be why they feel they were Zoroastrian priest. Now it's interesting because this manuscript that was found in the Vatican is a Syriac manuscript written in the 2nd to 3rd century after the birth of Christ and safeguarded for generations in the Vatican Library. Now that's just a, little blurb about the book. But it's interesting when you go back to some of this history. Now I know some feel Wikipedia is just no good and you can't rely on it. I do know they have been working to try to update a lot of their information to be more in line with real scholarly work. Now, it's interesting because when you go to the Imperial Bible Dictionary and look up the Magi from the 1800s, it has several pages about the Magi. And it's interesting because it does mention that since the Jews in Jerusalem at this time were very staunch against astrologers, magicians, magic practicing priests, and in the Torah it was condemned. Let's look that up. Let's go to Leviticus 19, 26 and 31. You must not eat nothing along with blood. This is the part we want to look at. You must not look for omens, and you must not practice magic. So I have to ask, if they were waiting for this star, wouldn't that be an omen? Looking to the future, divination? But see, that's what the Magi did. Let's go down to verse 31. Do not turn yourselves to the spirit mediums, and do not consult professional fortune tellers of events, so as to become unclean to them. I am Jehovah your God. And there's an asterisk there. And when you go down to the footnote, it says spirit mediums, agents used as a vessel of a demon of divination, ventriloquists, they have magos, astrologers, Magi. That's not in the footnote, but that's what, it means. Let's go over to Deuteronomy 18, 10 through 12. There should not be found in you anyone who makes his son or his daughter pass through the fire, anyone who employs divination, a practicer of magic, or anyone who looks for omens, or a sorcerer, or one who binds others with a spell, or anyone who consults a spirit medium, or a professional fortune teller of events, or anyone who inquires of the dead. And then they have another asterisk. And when you go down to the footnote, it says, see the footnote we just read. Now, here on Wikipedia, under Magi, it has subheading Greco-Roman sources, Classical Greek. The oldest surviving Greek reference to the Magi from Greek, I'm not going to try to pronounce those, except they do have the Magos, might be from the 6th century BCE, Heraclitus and Clemens, who curses the Magi for their impious rites and rituals. A description of the rituals that Heraclitus refers to has not survived, and there is nothing to suggest that Heraclitus was referring to foreigners. Now, for the Roman period, once the Magi had been associated with magic, Greek magikos. It was but a natural progression from the Greeks' image of Zoroaster, who would metamorphose into a magician too. The 1st century, Pliny the Elder named Zoroaster as the inventor of magic, but a principle of the division of labor appears to have spared Zoroaster most of the responsibility for introducing the dark arts to the Greek and Roman worlds. Now, moving a little bit further in time, the word magos, Greek, and its variants appear in both the Old and New Testaments. And we've read some of that. Ordinarily, the word is translated magician or sorcerer in the sense of illusionist or fortune teller. And this is how it is translated in all of its occurrences. Acts 13. Now, if you go over to Acts 13, starting in verse 6, it talks about someone who is believed to be one of the Magi. When they had gone through the whole island as far as Paphos, they met up with a certain man, a sorcerer, a false prophet, a Jew whose name was Bar Jesus. And he was with the proconsul Sergius Paulus, an intelligent man, calling Barnabas and Saul to him. This man earnestly sought to hear the word of God. And when you go through and read this, but this man was known as Simon the Magi, but then he wanted to buy the Holy Spirit. But it talks about him being a great man and, performing all of these, magic practicing things. Back to this article, the biblical Magi, it does say one of the non-canonical Christian sources, the Syriac infancy gospel, an apocrypha, provides in its 3rd chapter a story of the wise men of the East, which is very similar to much of the story in Matthew. Unlike Matthew, however, this account cites Zoroaster as a source of the prophecy that motivated the wise men to seek the infant Jesus. And it's even in the Islamic tradition, in Arabic, Magians, Mayas is the term for Zoroastrians. The term is mentioned in the Quran in Surah 22, verse 17, where the Magians are mentioned alongside the Jews, the Sabians, and the Christians in a list of religions who will be judged on the day of resurrection besides idolaters. And even the Chinese suggested that shaman, witch, wizard, magician may originate as a loan word from Old Persian magus, magician or magi. So, there's a lot of history of this word. And then you can do a lot of research about going back to the Zen Avesta, some of these ancient Persian writings about these. Many scholars feel that the Magi fled Babylon, Media area, and started a college in Pergamum. And it even mentions in Revelation verse 2 that Jesus was holding Pergamum because of all of these, vile things they were doing. And this false worship, idolatry, fornication. So that's another rabbit hole that is very interesting when you start researching, reading it. And like I said, in the Imperial Bible Dictionary, I'll put the link down below to that book, that volume. But it was just pages and pages of stuff. Now, even the Watchtower's Insight book, volume 2, page 293, they have magic and sorcery. And they even talk about these magi. It says the secret arts and uncanny powers presumably used to accomplish things beyond what is natural and associated with spiritistic occult powers. So they're saying this is in a bad light. This is from the occult, black magic, sorcery. Over on page 293, second column, among some ancient peoples, black magic was forbidden under penalty of death. The Bible, however, goes a step further and forbids every form of spiritistic magic. And they have those two scriptures we already read in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. And then when you go down to the third full paragraph, it says these spiritistic practices, so-called sciences, were developed and used by the ancient Chaldeans of Babylonia. Isaiah in the 8th century BCE tells us that Babylon of his day was rife with sorceries of all sorts. Isaiah 47:12-15. More than a century later, in the days of Daniel, the magic practicing priests were still a part of the Babylonian court. Now, when you do some of this other research, you find that most of the kings, pharaohs in Egypt, all of these rulers, they had a group of these wise men, these magi, these magic practicing priests. And if you've ever seen the movie The Ten Commandments, you know that when Moses and Aaron are before Pharaoh, the magic practicing priests are right there with their staff, and they throw it down and they become snakes. Well, these were the Egyptian magi. So all of these kings and pharaohs had, these group of men. And they wouldn't do anything. They wouldn't go to war or do anything unless they had talked to these group of men. They would have a dream and they would have these magi interpret them. Going on. And then it has the scriptures from Daniel. This expression, magic practicing priest, is a literal and explicit translation of the Hebrew. So, this brings up a question. And this is what started my research on this. Now, we all know the story how when Nebuchadnezzar destroyed Babylon in 586, 587, that a lot of the Jewish people were exiled to Babylon. So let's go to Daniel 1:20. And we know that 4 young men were exiled to Babylon. Daniel, they changed his name to Belteshazzar, and Hananiah to Shadrach, Mishael to Meshach, and Azariah to Abednego. So these 4 young men had gone to Babylon. So let's look at Daniel 1:20 and see what it says about them. And as regards every matter of wisdom and understanding that the king inquired about from them, he even got to find them 10 times better than all the magic practicing priests and the conjurers that were in his royal realm. So it sounds like they were part of these magi. And they were 10 times better than all the other magic practicing priests. Let's go over to Daniel 2:46-48. And this is what raised the question in my mind. And I started questioning things and started researching. Daniel 2:48 and 49. Consequently, the king made Daniel so and great. Now, Daniel just interpreted a dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. So 48, consequently the king made Daniel so and great, and many big gifts he gave to him, and he made him the ruler over all the jurisdictional district of Babylon, and the chief prefect over all the wise men of Babylon. And Daniel for his part made a request of the king, and he appointed over the administration of the jurisdictional district of Babylon Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But Daniel was in the court of the king. So Daniel was made chief of the Magi. And if you don't believe me, let's go over to another one. Let's go to Daniel 4:7-9. At that time, the magic practicing priests, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers were entering, and I was saying before them what the dream was, but its interpretation they were not making known to me. And at last there came in before me Daniel, whose name is Belteshazzar, according to the name of my God, and in whom there is a spirit of the holy gods, gods, plural. And before him I said what the dream was. Verse 9, O Belteshazzar, the chief of the magic practicing priests, because I myself well know that the spirit of the holy gods is in you, and that there is no secret at all that is troubling you. So there again, chief of the magic practicing priests, the Magi. Let's go over to Daniel 5:11. There exists a capable man in your kingdom in whom there is the spirit of holy gods, plural, Elohim. And in the days of your father, illumination and insight and wisdom like the wisdom of gods were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father himself, set him up as chief of the magic practicing priests, the conjurers, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers, even your father, O king. Daniel was made chief of the Magi, the magic practicing priests, the astrologers. Now, Watchtower, in their insight book, they admit this. They said, but even though he was in the king's court as chief of the Magi, he was still a worshiper of Jehovah. And that's why he got thrown in the lion's den, for his devotion, his loyalty to Jehovah, by praying every day. But in Leviticus and Deuteronomy, that law, if they were a Jew, that was in the Torah. They had to follow that. So why did he accept this position from King Nebuchadnezzar and keep it for all those years? If he was a loyal servant of the one God, Jehovah, God the Father, the source of all, why did he accept that position and say, I can't do that? I don't know. I can't answer that. I don't know his mind. I don't know, what all of this was. Now, I do want to mention that in the Insight book, that it does mention in Acts 7, verse 43. I'll just read that real quick. But it was the tent of Molech and the star of the god Raphan that you took up the figures which you made to worship them. Consequently, I will deport you beyond Babylon. So this is when Israel had taken up idolatry again. And Stephen, before he was stoned, he said, even in the wilderness, they were worshiping Molech. Now, in some of my research, and like I said, it's another deep hole, I didn't want to get into a lot of the details, but some feel that the worship of the god of Molech is synonymous with Magi. So that brings up a whole lot more questions. Why would Daniel, if he was a loyal servant of Jehovah, want to be affiliated with these Magi who were known to worship the god Molech? And even in that scripture, we read either in Deuteronomy or Leviticus, it says not to pass your son through the fire. And then it mentions about the magic practicing Magi. So it's right in the same verse. And that's why a lot feel that, this was affiliated with the worship of the god of Molech. Just some thoughts and just some research I have done. And I mean, there's enough information to keep doing videos for years. So I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for watching, and you have a happy new year. Be safe. Bye.